Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar about the invoicing transformation with Oracle JD Edwards. My name is Andrea Fernandez, and I'm from the Product Marketing Department. And here I am today with Nelson Cunha, our product owner for our invoicing automation solution. A little bit about Steltix, in case you don't know us. We are a global team of more than 200 experts worldwide. We have delivery in over 36 countries with local offices in 11 of them. And we proudly serve over 800 customers all over the world. We have deep industry knowledge of all the JD Edwards processes, and we're happy to be here with you to share some information about invoicing. So what we do is basically guide our clients, their organizations, with their JD Edwards journey. We take the responsibility for their business critical processes, maybe not so critical as well. And we do that through software. So we design, deliver, and optimize JD Edwards solution, the ERP that we all love. We like to say that the journey starts with the advisory. So our clients come to us, they need some advisory. That's what we deliver to them. Then we go on to the implementation of the project that they need us to do. And then we move on to managed services or support, which would be the last part of the cycle. I would like to say also that we have a 24/7 capability on that managed services, covering all time zones globally. Although we are not a company that develops products over the time, and because some of our clients needed some solutions with JD Edwards, we have developed a few, let's say, call it solutions or products, which are the following ones. So we can start with AppShare, which is one of our start products. AppShare allows our clients to work with JD Edwards from anywhere. So either if you're in a warehouse, you are outside the office, or you need to access JD Edwards for any reason, you can deliver transactions through your mobile phone, maybe your tablet, even a scanner on their warehouse. So it's a really cool solution that we have. Continuing with our invoicing automation solution, which Nelson will cover on that later. We also have Transparent Logon, which some of you may know about. It has been with us for a few years now, and it's our single sign-on solution and multi-factor authentication. So what it does, it saves time for our JD Edwards users when they have to enter JD in order to maybe not have problems with password resets, and it gets you into JD in no time. Dropzone, which allows our customers to also upload and update thousands of records in minutes. Version workbench, which helps with rollouts of JD different versions in maybe different companies that use different versions of JD. And one of the last ones developed with product development from Oracle and Oracle University, which is OGL for JD Edwards. Basically, OGL for JD Edwards is an app digital coach that allows users to work with JD in a manner that they can be guided through the processes that they're doing. So it's really, really good for training, onboarding, and helping users always stay current on best practices. According to the European Commission, so electronic invoicing is the exchange of an electronic invoice document between a supplier and a buyer. An invoice has been issued, transmitted, and received in a structured data format. So no PDFs here, which allows for its automatic and electronic processing. A little bit on the invoicing evolution that I believe all of us have experienced over the years. So we can start with a beautiful paper invoice. Then we move on quickly to the PDF version of that invoice. And then in order to digitally, let's say, gather that data, we have OCR technology, which is optical character recognition, that allows for those paper and PDFs to be imported into a digital mode. And just to finish what we're seeing nowadays, which is an invoice, as you can see, not the most beautiful one as the first one, but it's what we're working on with nowadays. A little bit about governments and the increased mandates on invoicing. Just to give a couple of examples, we can see an increase in demand of governments just basically creating these laws to implement invoicing. And they have actually good reasons to do that, right? So the reasons that they have is basically ensuring compliance with payment regulations, also to help with digital transformation with the companies and reduce the fraud and improve tax collection. So Spain, for example, will be implementing invoicing from next year. We also have France, which is advancing in the new electronic taxation system with private companies. Netherlands also in 2023 implemented e-orders via PayPal for the central government procurement sector. And Malaysia, for example, it's starting B2B invoicing from August 2024 as well. Germany will be starting B2B invoicing from 2027, and additionally, companies must be capable of receiving electronic invoices by next year. And just one last example, the Belgian Parliament has approved the proposed law on invoicing. So starting January 2026. That was a bit of information about invoicing, but without further ado, I don't want to take much more time from Nelson's explanation and demo. So on to you, Nelson. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea, for the excellent introduction. And hi, everyone. So what I'm about to present is a Steltix add-on to JD Edwards, which will help you to cope with e-invoicing regulations. As Andrea just explained, across Europe, South America, North America, well, a bit everywhere worldwide, we start to hear about e-invoicing. And governments are starting to publishing their laws, the unique formats, the unique regulations. And we believe we set a good basis for you to attend these requirements. So all it will need is to install our add-on. And for that, you can cover either together or individually, inbound, so for supplier invoices, or outbound for customer invoices. Okay. Our solution is indeed flexible, as you can see, and I'll let you know during this demo. So focusing on two separate products, although it's one add-on, we can implement both processes individually. The outbound invoices, which is indeed our latest product, allows you to integrate with any business to business or business to government communication. We do that with API connectivity or a simple SFTP communication according to your JD Edwards tools and version. Our tool, as you will see, it's quite flexible, which allows to switch on and off features that are unique to your region. Okay. Often we see that the digital signature is required, but that could be also not the case for other countries, in which we can simple disable or enable it on company and transactional level. The digital signature, the XML build, or actually the invoicing that Andrea just showed us before, can be disabled or enabled in such way. From this point onwards, once you install our add-on, you'll start to feed as well the document storage, which is available together with our add-on. So no longer to need to have the manual archive. So JD Edwards will actually be storing every invoice that you issue, and also not only storing the PDF if you require, but also the XML. So you can use for the future XML for auditing purposes. You can inquiry based on your sales order inquiry or customer ledger. You can inquiry all your invoices and available within JD Edwards. To monitor all invoices, as you will know and learn today, there will be a lot of communications in and out of GD AdWords to cover the outbound requirements. And for that, we developed a dedicated workbench where you can apply company security as in GD AdWords and focus on the status of every invoice, if it was delivered, if it is in error, if it was accepted by the tax authorities or customer. So hopefully that you can bring and have in one screen all the information you need. Okay. On the other hand, we have inbound invoices. And this is a rebranding of our APA solution that for some of you that might be familiar. So in this sense, 4 years ago, we turned our direction of this product to cope with e-invoicing requirements. I mean, to import XML files. And that in the very first stage allowed us to work with any OCR, which we hope they will be deprecated soon because the solution itself is then ready to import e-invoicing files since 4 years ago. So by saying this, we have a way more robust tool. Not only it copes with the invoicing requirements, but also allows validation, matching of the invoices for you, and comes as well together with document storage, approval workflow, escalations, which is a feature that probably you're not aware, and as well, same as outbound invoices, we have a separate dedicated workbench, which allows you to cope better with segregation of duties. So for AP department, you would have a workbench, which will be dedicated only for inbound invoices. And for AR, accounts receivable department, you'll have a dedicated workbench for outbound invoices. We will see both today. And in the end of the session, let me know if you have any questions. So outbound invoicing, let's focus on this one firstly, because this is the major impact at the moment in many of the countries worldwide. So we developed a solution in GD AdWords, and our main focus was not to create additional steps at all to the operation. We know that issuing of invoices on the supply chain modules is critical. There's shipping processes at risk. Timing is critical, so we developed a solution that does not cost you any time. In the overall, what we developed is when you press the button to print an invoice, everything occurs in the background. Let me explain you how. Okay? So by today, using your GD AdWords, whenever you do the invoice print, of course, the PDF is generated. Eventually, you deliver it automatically by email, and that's it, right? So with our add-on, once we include it, depending if your country or region relies on signed invoices, we may have to disable your email delivery. So before sending out an email, we need to sign and then generate the XML, embed the PDF in the XML, and only then submit to the tax authorities or customers. So there's a lot of different outputs coming with this requirement, but the beauty is that the user, the end user, will still press the same button as he did before. Okay. Once you press the invoice, and this is in the case you need online invoicing, right? We make that custom change on that report using a NER function that will check if the transaction, if the company requires indeed a invoicing for that specific transaction. And when that combination is found, you will start to feed our workbench. So for instance, if you have a transaction that does not require any sort of invoice or is not issued to any customer or has no fiscal, is not relevant in the fiscal terms, well, then the transaction can be easily excluded and it will skip our workbench. No need to monitor or trace an invoice which is not required. Once it's on the invoicing workbench, we will see the acceptance status, the payment, the cancellation, well, all messages coming back and forward that are legally required. Yeah, and those are reflected. So the acceptance, payment, and cancellation are reflected under a specific status that can be configurable and extended within the implementation itself. All we aim is that you have real-time information that you can easily track if an invoice is in error, that you can also react in due time and not leave it to end of the day, for instance, but in a way that you are alerted that an invoice needs some attention. Okay. So just to emphasize exactly what I said, we promise we don't change your day-to-day activity. So we want you to still do picking, shipments, issue your invoices exactly as you do it today. So how we put the process in place is that when you issue the invoice, in the backend, an invoice is issued. So in other ways, a PDF is issued together with the XML, which is the UEL format normally, and both are digitally signed. So this will be from this day onwards, once you implement, the delivery that you send out to your customers or tax authorities. So the PDF will become slightly less important. Indeed, it will be part of the XML, so we embed the PDF in the XML, but what the customer or tax authorities will receive is indeed XML. This is to boost the integration within systems and to have more accurate and real-life information. Not only that, so we assure that the delivery copes with the local requirements, but also the PDF and XML that were sent out to the customer or tax authorities is also uploaded to JD Edwards, so you can easily inquiry the transaction. Okay. From that point onwards, the communication with tax authorities, as I said before, can be done with API if you're using the latest JD Edwards. We explored all the possibilities within the orchestration studio to make this work for you. But in case if you are in an older release, we can evaluate using SFTP folders with or not a service provider as working as a middleman between the entities. It's worth mentioning the service provider because indeed for many of the countries we've been working with, you will need the service provider. Then it's up to you to decide if you want to go forward with a global service provider or a local one. The beauty of it is that we have an agnostic solution and we can integrate with any partner out there. Okay? So this integration, as you can imagine, is part of the implementation. Still without development, as you will see, only using no code setup, if you can call it like that. That to allow you to have all API of inbound and outbound messages to cover the customer invoices requirements. So with or without service provider, the customer will receive the invoice and it will record new messages. So acceptance, payment, cancellation of the invoice. These will be new communication channels within the invoicing world. So be prepared to monitor this in the future. And this is basically what to expect quite soon. Again, the message that I want to leave you today, full compliance, no operational impact at all. Okay, I'll show you how this works in the system. Switching now to JD Edwards screen. So this is our main page. As you can see, these were the sales order inquiry will be the one you use today. This is fully embedded with JD Edwards. The invoice print will be the same job or report you run today. What we'll do is end up feeding our workbench. Okay, within our workbench, we need to make sure that they assure that the invoices are issued, and by issued I mean that are sent out of JD Edwards to the service provider, tax authorities, etc. We need to monitor that all invoices, of course, are issued. So we need to track any undelivered invoices. In certain countries, we require online invoicing, so they need to come out instantaneously. But there are others might be that it's an end of day process. So there's some flexibility on early adopter markets. For instance, in Romania, you can do that every 3 to 5 days as a starting point. But in other regions in South America, it has to be online. So you can't ship goods without an approved invoice, for example. So our solution has to adapt to every market, as I mentioned before. Most importantly, you need to make sure that no invoices are in error. This may have critical impact on your operations. So mostly these we need to track, of course. But let me explain you how this works. So our add-on uses a bit of terminology of JD Edwards. So to reduce it drastically the configuration, we developed constants. And with these constants, we can enable the process by module. So if you see on my screen, you have product code. We can enable by company. And in a deep lower level, we can define and enable the process by order type and document type. This allows you to be quite specific on the type of transaction you need to configure within the system. As I mentioned before, if you have internal processes which do not require e-invoicing at all, you can easily exclude them by having a specific order type or document type outside the range of these constants. Okay? Within this combination, you can determine a default layout. So what we've seen is that every country has a default layout that are specific to that country, unfortunately. So there's not a global one. But indeed, we have a no-code mapper that allows to fetch every table in the system, custom or non-custom. So we made it flexible enough to cope with all the requirements that you have, that you can pick up any information within your database. On top of that, if you work with key accounts, big customer accounts, that indeed require a particular set of information that are unique to that customer, you can also override the layout by reserving one of the cat codes available on the customer. And with that, you can make a customer-specific layout. Okay, we've seen that on our experience with AP, so we developed the same for customers. Now, if the next topic is then digital signature. This is, of course, adopted locally to avoid corrupted invoices or fake invoices, if that's a word that you are familiar with, but might not be legally required. Or you may have the service provider doing that for you, so you can easily disable a feature to be used or not. Okay. So within using one screen for multiple companies, multiple modules, multiple order types, you have the flexibility to disable or enable features of your e-invoicing module. Okay, if you indeed require the digital signature, all you have to do is map your certificate, password, etc. Okay. Same with email delivery. You can enable email delivery or not if you use it today or not. And all this comes together, of course, as I mentioned before, using the orchestration. Again, just a side note, if you're not using the latest JD Edwards, we can also come up with a solution using a batch to pick up all the transactions from this workbench. So it's not a showstopper if you don't use the orchestration. Okay. So as you can see, we can determine which transactions can be accepted as an invoicing. So once you run the invoice print, the report itself will look for this company, the transaction type, order type, and if it all matches, it will then start to feed our workbench. Within the workbench, which I'm about to press now, this is the workbench that will be fed online every time you print the invoices. Okay. The invoices originally they will start with the new invoice status, so probably the XML has not been generated, signed, etc. So this is where you will track if the invoice is what is the status of the invoice. Okay. Once everything is finalized, either using a scheduler on the orchestration or a batch, the first status will be sent. Once sent, you will start to be able to visualize not only the invoicing file, but also the PDF. And on this combination, for this company 70, your order type SO and RI, I did require a digital signature, which you can visually see on the name of the file because it will name as signed. And also, if you pop out the viewer, you will be able to see the digital signature on the file properties, okay? The digital signature can be visible or not. The requirement might be different country to country, okay? But from this point onwards, as I mentioned before, every outgoing invoice will be recorded and stored within the system, okay? So regardless if you are in our workbench or in the sales order inquiry, you can indeed visualize the same information. Just a quick look at the order inquiry. So this is the standard application of JD AdWords, and using the CAFE1 pages, you can easily, together with the order, which I'm sure you must be familiar with this application, you can indeed, from this point onwards, track all the information and layout as well. Same can be applied in accounts receivable, well, everywhere where you have the reference towards the invoice number. Okay. Well, coming back to our workbench. So in here, we can, as I mentioned before, track the status of the invoice. We can custom your next status, so sort of activity rules within the invoicing process. All of these are be able to be configured according to your specifications. Okay. You can track when the invoices were sent and when it was approved or canceled. All this information will be populated on your workbench. There's also available fields for you to complete with the specific information. As an example, prior to send the invoice out to tax authorities or customer, you can still add particular information and like a contract number or project number. Okay, all the remaining information, item, price, etc. Of course, those are totally disabled. Okay. We have I forgot. We have options to as well to monitor all the auditing. So if we want to keep track how many times it was sent and adjusted, or if it was edited, any information on the detail, we will also track down all those steps in the auditing field. So here we have like a timestamp of every event to track performance and eventually any KPI that you need. If something goes wrong with the invoice, you should be able as well to resend, and more options will be added here in the future releases because as our inbound solution, we plan to have quite some releases on this to attend all the requirements. On screen, you see here some buttons which are personal forms, form extensions to call the orchestrations, but they could be also set to call any reports. So there's no tool dependency at this point other than having the UDOs available for you. Okay. So that's how we track the invoicings on outbound using this workbench. If you have any questions, save for later. I'll have a dedicated time for Q&A. Okay. So what we just saw is invoicing workbench that is fed online every time you invoice the customer, and without creating any additional steps within the sales process, as an example, right? We saw a digitally stamped invoice, so both XML and PDF are digitally signed, and as you could confirm, automatically stored in JD Edwards. Then, using the API connectivity or SFTP, we assure you that we can cope with all PEPL requirements. So that is not only corresponding to send the invoice, but also to process the messages sent by the customer. So we developed a proof of concept with the service provider that is working as expected. And now with the implementations we are doing, of course, the knowledge is growing as well. But this is how you expect to interact with your invoices. Okay. On the other hand, we also have to deal with supplier invoices. From this day onwards, you will not receive an email or a letter with your invoice. So I believe it was clear to everyone that depending on different threshold amounts, governments are adopting in a faster or lower pace. But in the end, in a few years' time, no invoices or paper invoices will be sent, but instead, there will be imported automatically to JD Edwards. On this product, as it's running for quite some years and we do have an install base, we are ready for importing the invoices, but also for countries that are not yet ready, we work with some OCR services available out there, or softwares that you may have in-house that facilitate the conversion of any PDF that you might still work with to an actual e-invoicing file. And until today, we've processed tens of thousands of those invoices successfully. Okay. So this is not only about importing invoices, but in the end, we want to automate your registry of invoices. So the system will try to do what you do today manually. We will try to do a voucher match. We will try to do a cost voucher, a logged voucher, freight match, you name it. Even before you look at the transaction, we aim towards having a match if it's possible. This allows you to go paperless once you install it, of course. No need to have the physical archiving again, like in the outbound invoices, as all the PDFs and XMLs will be stored also in JD Edwards. I believe more or less every year we came out with a release. Actually, we are doing also and about to release a new release for the invoice outbound product. And one of the features that we developed, I believe, last year was the voucher escalation. So if there's any issue that prevents me to register the invoice, I don't have to pick up the phone or send an email. I'll actually use JD Edwards and quite soon my mobile device to handle issues with the invoice or lack of information. So I can reach out to anyone within the system, the logistics department, the buyers, etc., to confirm pricing, the PO number, etc. So we came up with this, that together with these escalations, we build timestamps and can actually justify why sometimes an invoice or a particular supplier always gets paid overdue, as an example. On top of that, we offer the approval workflow. Standard JD Edwards does not allow you to have a approval for invoices in accounts payable, and indeed our solution offers you that. So you can define one or multiple approvals depending on threshold or variance amount. So also looking forward to show you. And quite important to mention, the same as the outbound solution, it's a non-invasive tool. So we don't change any of the system. We don't create any dependency, so if you still have tools upgrade in the future, you can easily install, having a clear mind that you don't have to retrofit or at all, because we don't change our line of code developed by Oracle. Actually, we reuse in order to record transactions, etc. So by installing as is, we'll be instantly matching with the outbound invoicing logic. Okay. So what we see in the accounts payable process is that you receive the invoices today. You manually key it. If you have errors, you have to cancel and try again, probably in a couple hours or the next day, until somebody replies your email. So there's a lot of efforts that are not adding value to the company. So how we propose is that you receive the invoices electronically, and the system tries to book the invoice or register the invoice automatically for you. So in case any information is missing, it will still remain on the workbench, and you don't have to retype the information again. So it's just there. You can refresh the information, refresh the validation without manually keying anything, right? We also allow you to skip the manual archiving. So we have requirements that in customers in countries that you need to store the invoices up to 8 years, 10 years. Well, from this point onwards, you can store it in JD Edwards. Depending on the tools, if you work with 32-bit or 64-bit environment, you may be able to store the invoices on the server using a folder, a Windows folder simply, or on the database. So if you have questions on that, you can also let us know. And of course, you can still do manual checks with our add-on, but indeed, those will be presented as errors to you. So our module can present up to 100 different errors in one invoice. If hopefully not, but it's capable of doing that. Okay. And in the end, what we want is to reduce the risk of registering late VAT or a liability towards any supplier. So again, how you will get the invoices by API. If your country is already in invoicing regulations. If not, we can use, as I mentioned before, any OCR as a service provider or a service provider that copes with the invoicing requirements. So regardless of the way to go, we can receive the invoices by FTP, by email, by API, and in the end, within one click or with the scheduler, we can easily convert the invoicing files to an actual transaction in JD Edwards. So we have the XML mapper, which we call UMapper, which allows to convert, for instance, requisition to actual purchase order and to match it against the PO, as an example. This, of course, is part of the services when implementing such a tool, where we try to optimize the mapping towards your needs. Again, the UMapper is also configurable and does not require development to adjust or to to adjust to your needs or data that you may have your JD Edwards. And in the end, what we want to propose is instantly the system suggesting you to book a standard cost voucher, two-way or three-way match, etc. Okay. Let me show how it is in JD Edwards. So now switching to inbound. So as I mentioned before, this is a way more robust. So it's on the market for quite some years. All you need is import vouchers, and by importing vouchers is the conversion of any e-invoicing file to an actual transaction in our workbench. Once you import and you can set up in a scheduler, all the invoices will be presented on the workbench. Similar look and feel as the outbound, right? In the end, we try to to standardize the tool. So the invoices can be imported and it could fail to recognize the supplier. Unfortunately, that could be still the case. Or it can automatically try to suggest a cost voucher to be booked, or a voucher match, or a log voucher. This depends, of course, on the setup that you may want in your system. Okay. If any information is missing, of course, you don't have to re-enter the transaction on and on, right? So let's say the supplier is missing, you can easily ask your master data department to set up the supplier and then just simply reset the voucher. So the system will try to match all for you, okay? If you want to go to a more traditional way as well, that's possible that you can indeed complete the information. Every time that you are on the detail of the invoice, we can enable or disable particular key information for you to complete. Of course, you also always have the document viewer to support. So it can be quite handy to work with two separate monitors, where you can put the PDF on one side, transaction on the left, and to fix the remaining transaction. Okay. Now, some of the features that definitely will be game-changing for you on AP. The system checks for multiple errors at once, and you can, instead of trying to fix one by one, you can have an overview of what's preventing you to book the invoice. It could be missing setup. We also check if the bank accounts are stored or not, if the tax ID matches exactly what you have on the address book. So together with this tool, as a result, if you don't have today a good master data, I'm sure you will end up with a quite good master data, because on an invoicing file, the bank account details will be there. So we can make sure that you pay the invoice to the actual bank account. We can also make sure that the tax ID on your system is correct, or eventually, hopefully not, prevent you to book a fraud invoice where the tax ID is possibly a fake one. So all the errors or warnings that you see here on the screen can be set as warnings or errors. Okay, it's also configurable. Now, if you have needs for further, in order to book this invoice, if you have needs to get more additional information, you have the escalation option, which allows you to reach anyone within the company. So if it is a PO-based entry, so a voucher match, it instantly populates the buyer. If not, you can easily type to anyone, and by doing this, what we will start to do is feed the auditing of an invoice, and as you can imagine, track and assign a responsible to the invoice. That's the escalated person. And as I mentioned before, build information to have accurate KPIs on AP. PO number. As an example, I can reach Brooke Abrams to provide me the additional information. By the time I escalate, so the invoice can become on hold, so we make usage of hold codes, and we begin a communication. So if you check the communication tab, then we begin communication that will be visible and possible to inquire throughout all the life cycle of the invoice. Back to the workbench, if I focus now on this transaction, I can tell, just focus on this grid format, I can tell the same information is now escalated to Brooke Abrams. So on the one workbench, you can see on who is depending the invoice. It might be escalated or pending approval. Okay, once fixed, once the information is sent back to us, you can easily resume working the invoice. Okay. Coming back to the audit history that you might be interested on having, so we can track every major event around the invoice. When it was imported, when the whole code, a bit like we use it on the sales order inquiry, we brought it to our product when the old code was related to the transaction and when it was escalated. If an invoice is, for instance, processed, as an example, you have, of course, way more information. So in this case, this one was approved and you have the approver number also available here. Okay. Well, every time we process, we then have the workflow being kicked off, right? Let me just focus on some more recent transactions. So the workflow can be set depending on thresholds or variances, as I mentioned before. And it's only kicked off when we process the transaction, actually when we book the invoice into GTS. Every unprocessed transaction that sits in the workbench not yet processed, you may have escalated, you may have matched against the receipt, etc. But until it's processed, it's not kicking off the workflow. Okay. So that's why on processed, we see here the approval status being fed, and also we can track what is the pending approver. If the invoice had no variances at all, it could also be set as auto approved. And in case you use or want to use log voucher entry, you'll have also like two parts of approval. So approving when you book the log voucher, and the second approval process when you redistribute the log voucher. What else? On any invoice, as you can see, so we saw the escalate option. We have the receipts match option. So you can, as you do today, if the system did not match the purchase order, you can still do so as you do today. Three-way or two-way match. If you use the transportation modules, let me just clear the error here. Yeah, as you can see, the errors are always checking all at once, or just removing errors. If you have the transportation module in place, we also have the freight match. Let's say a boosted freight match because it allows to book variances. The standard freight match option is quite limited in standard JD Edwards, which only allows one-to-one match. I mean, on amount itself. So we came up with quite interesting way to book variances and distribute them evenly around all shipments or with pre-selected shipments. So if you are curious to know, also leave us a question. And also what you'll see is not yet out in the market. So that's this is like the beta release of our version. But we came up with a new way of distributing variances as well. So we combined the landed cost feature in JD Edwards to distribute purchase order variances to prevent that the user books variances in a random account in the P&L, as an example. So to make it more structured in a way. Many of the features I mentioned can be enabled or disabled, so that's part of a robust tool. What we can assure is that the system and the product is ready for invoicing. Also to send out all the communications if you register the invoice, if you accepted, if you canceled, those will come out of this workbench as well. Other features that or other roles that are affected by implementing this module, just quickly, is how to handle escalations. So if I get an escalation out of my AP department, I can easily see the invoice and, as an example, the message that was sent to me. I can see the detail, and of course, the PDF related to the invoice. Yeah. So again, this always follows the transaction, and with it, always the XML. In here, I can easily add the information that is needed or do the operation that is needed, and then return the message or the escalation to our AP module. Same with approver. If I am an approver or one of the approvers of one invoice, I'll have a dedicated application to approve. So just using one example here, I can see on the header level the cost variance, the cost percentage, variance percentage, and on detail, I can, of course, still communicate with the AP clerk and also see the variances based on the original amounts of the invoice and what was actually booked. This is a quite drastic example, but it tells you that it's quite visible why it's asking for an approval due to the large difference. Okay. From here, you can approve, reject, reroute to someone else, or actually use the escalate to check the pricing. Definitely, this was a big issue from the buyer, so you can still escalate here. Until it gets approved, you won't be able to pay the invoice. So we work with the pay status of the invoice, and it's set to pending while it's awaiting the workflow to be concluded. Only when approved, you will be actually releasing the invoice, setting the pay status to A to actually conclude the payment. Okay. So that's basically it. It summarizes what I wanted to show. Of course, we can't show everything today, but hopefully to catch an eye out of the audience today, you can always do request a follow-up session. Happy to do so. And yeah, also dropped any question on the Q&A. We thought of mentioning also today, I don't know if you recall the first product that Andrea mentioned today, AppShare. This allows for you to work with any mobile device, either from a browser or now from a cool Android app. You can still work with, still work with mobile and approve out of mobile, check the PDF, etc. You can check more on AppShare at Steltix.com. So hopefully you leave today's session with the idea that Steltix can be the partner to help you with the invoicing life cycle. As it is not a static version, we actually are continuously working on extending and making the solution more smart. You can count with us to come up with yearly updates at least, and to use our expertise to adapt it better to your processes, of course. And again, fully integrated with GD Editors, you don't have to train anyone else in a different software. As you could see, it has a look and feel of GD Editors all over the place. We recently updated our invoicing automation website for anyone that is looking for further information. If you are keen on doing so, you can scan the QR code and let us know. If you can easily reach us out through there as well. Andrea, now maybe you can help me if there's any messages out there.
I don't see any questions, so in case you have any, you can just go on the top of your screen to the Q&A section next to the chat. Okay, I just have the first question from Pedro. Is it possible to automate the escalation for approvers, like with an escalation matrix for disputed invoices set up with some parameters?
We have behind any error code a unique code. And indeed, within our install base, we set up automated escalations using orchestrations. That was already done, but it's not part of the product, but it's possible to build. Yeah.
Okay. We have a couple of more minutes for more questions, but in the meantime, I would like to just let you know that the recording of this meeting will be sent to you. And also, if you have any questions to us, you can just drop me a message or Nelson in case you have any questions about your country specific regulations, and we can help you with that as well. So it looks like we don't have any more questions, Nelson.
Okay. So
your presentation was very informative.
And we did it in the right time, so that's good.
Very good, very good.
Well,
no, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, and feel free to reach us out. Okay.
Have a great day. Thank you. Goodbye.